This is a quick introduction into the intraday dashboard that I've created. Here's the intraday dashboard summary page. The tab down below is in orange. A quick overview of the sections. We've got a quick market, any indice you want. I have the usual suspects, NASDAQ, S&P, Russell, Dow. I also have the VIX for volatility. I can adjust the simple moving average, the daily SMA for all of these. See where they are in relation. As you can see, all the indices are below their 50-day moving average, ranging from about 2% to 7%. Then we have intermarket. I like to watch gold, the dollar, bonds, also interested in oil, and then we have ACWI. Then sectors, the typical spider sectors. I have a few extra of the semis. You can put whatever you want in any of these. I'll show you how in a little bit. And then the top 10 watch lists, which usually have a couple of favorites from my day trading basket, and then I'll rotate in and out a few other trading opportunities as they develop. The first section here is geared towards the open. Above it all, we have a quick tally of out of the 100 stocks in the day basket, how many are gainers, how many are decliners, and those that have relative strength stronger than or weaker than the market. So you can get a pretty quick assessment of the bias at or near the open. Depending on your data provider, you may or may not get pre-market data. These are all in pairs, with the top row showing relative strength to some extent, and the bottom showing relative weakness. So gap up, gap down, they're all in pairs of opposites, opening strength, weakness, and so on. So one of the things I look for when I start trading is relative strength for longs and relative weakness for shorts. You've got gaps, those are pretty self-explanatory. But if you find that you need additional information for any of these, if you go down to the individual tabs that has the data on it, I've tried to include links where you can learn more. Opening stats are statistics, the range statistics that occur at the open to the long side and the short side over a 30-day period usually. And this tells you what percentage above or below, a move above or below, that average is. So if you see a negative number down here, it means that as far as the downside goes, this has exceeded the 30-day by 17%. The range is the range of the stock during the day, high to low range for the day. It'll tell you where it's at. Now here's Tesla, and here's the range from here to here, pre-market and during market hours, and it's managed to work its way back up near the top of the range, and so you have a 95%. We look at LLL, and this gap down at the morning, but then went on a tear and basically moved in an uptrend all day long, and it's closed near the top of its range. Then we have moving averages. I usually like to do the 5 and the 15 EMA, and depending on how high that number is, or how high above 1 it is, it'll tell you to some extent how long you've had this crossover. So the blue is the 15, the green is the 5, over the last 5 periods. All the little numbers right here usually refer to periods. I use a 3-minute interval, so a 5 period on a 3-minute interval would be 15 minutes. You can adjust all these in the XLQ preferences section under data settings, intraday preference. You can see there's the 3-minute interval that I use. Also, you can select preferences for your intraday data provider. To my knowledge, TD Ameritrade, Interactive Brokers, and IQ Feed are the only ones that do intraday data, although I could be wrong. The next we have just relative strength and relative weakness. The higher the number, the stronger the relative strength over the last 5 periods, so over the last 15 minutes. And you can adjust these intervals. So here's DOCU, and it has been in a little uptrend, showing some relative strength over the last 15 minutes. After that, we have surge up, and basically what that is comparing the current price move to recent price moves to try and anticipate if the size of the move would be a spike or a surge. You know, a lot of times you get a breakout, you'll have a spike in price movement, and if you can identify that early enough, you can jump on board or wait for a pullback, a smaller risk pullback, and get on. ATR percent, again, it's just about the size of the candle. Where you'll really see this shine is on earnings season. If you have a stock that reports earnings and it does really well or really poorly, this number will rip. But it can also be something like this. I'm trying to gauge bars. So you have this downtrend, 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 and then suddenly this spike. I want to know about it because oftentimes it can signal a change might be on the horizon, or a good opportunity to get aboard the trend as a pullback. Then we have greater than the 2-day high or the prior weekly high, pretty self-explanatory. When stocks break out above their daily highs, their weekly highs, their monthly highs, you can often get a very large move, or at least a strong trend. Not always, but the odds often favor that, especially if the market is also confirming that direction. NKTR seems to be the stock of the day. You see, it broke a 2-day low, and then it just collapsed. It just kept going and going and going. Wherever support or resistance is tested and fails, you can sometimes get some pretty good moves. So this is mostly geared towards the open to find relative strength or weakness. You can jump on board the trend or wait for a pullback, or what I call a check back, and then jump aboard. This is the mid dash, and I use it after enough time has passed that I actually have some structure to the price action or trend action, and I want to look a little deeper at the moves. Any move that's above average volume to the upside or to the downside, I'm very interested in, because large players and institutions are the ones that move stock. Retail traders are not buying 1 million, 2 million, 3 million shares. They're not moving it. So this is where you find those big player, those institutional footprints in the volume. And if you have a strong move up or down with strong volume, a lot of times you can have follow through the next day, and that can make a good opportunity. I feel like it's also very important, if you decide I'm interested in this stock, to find out, does it have a specific catalyst that is responsible for the strong move up or the strong move down, especially if it's moving against the trend of the overall market, because most stocks will succumb to the general market movement. The force tool, that's an indicator that factors in price movement and volume. It's a handy little tool. Let's take a look at Adobe. It can find strong trends throughout the day. Obviously, the larger the number, the stronger the trend. Here's Adobe. You know, it's overall a very choppy market, but as it had its shakeout as the overall market fell this morning, then he had a strong bounce, a few pullbacks, and it managed to remain pretty strong. Just did a little check back to the open and then went on its way. That's all very tradable. You want to try to get these kind of trends and these kind of reversals if you can. Then we have the up-down volume ratio. That's just a simple ratio between the up volume and the down volume. The stronger the number, the better the volume. What you have to consider is the period. Again, the interval. This is a 10 interval and 10. In fact, I like most of them at 10 for midday or mid-morning. And so that means over the last 30 minutes, not necessarily all day, just the last 30 minutes. So I'm looking for volume strength pretty much in all of these. And then I look at the chart to make sure I also have complementary price strength. These three, vortex trend, ADX trend, and price slope, have more to do with how strong is the trend. Is there a trend? How strong is it to the upside? And in turn, how strong is it to the downside? And you notice that they do capture some that are the same, like LLL, HUM. But then there's a few that the ADX trend, using a DMI positive or DMA negative, might catch that the vortex trend doesn't. And also, if you'll notice, I have designed this dashboard so that when you get repeated tickers in multiple categories, they'll light up. Those are ones that I like to pay attention to. If it's firing on all cylinders, then the chances of follow through are greater. Same for up here, shop, Wix and Wix, DOCU pops up a couple of times. So wherever there's a repeat, usually in the top 5 anyway, it will highlight. Same to the downside. In the top 10 watch list, anything over 3% will usually pop up in blue. Before I forget, we've got a quick tick check where you can punch in any ticker you want. It'll give you the bid, the ask, the spread, and what the percent change has been since the open. Very handy little tool. If you see a stock here that you're interested in, it's always a good idea to check and see what the spread is. That can have a huge impact on your profits. And if the spread is much higher than usual, it can indicate that there's low breadth. And you don't want to get involved in something that has low breadth because a lot of times the price action is very choppy or doesn't really go anywhere. Here we have overbought and oversold. We've got the traditional RSI overbought oversold numbers. And then percent B, that's the percentage beyond the Bollinger Band, the upper Bollinger Band or the lower Bollinger Band. And these are more geared towards a reversion to the mean in general. That's how most people use them. I actually will use them to try and find strong trends intraday if it's early enough in the day. If it's later in the day, yes, I might look for potential setups to reverse a trend, see how the price action and the trend structure is playing out. But I use it to actually find relative strength and relative weakness, and I try to see, is there a way I can jump aboard that trend? Here we have FDI. That stands for Fractal Dimensions, a tool that is designed to help people see if there's a potential trend change. The way I look at it, I just try to simplify and streamline everything. If you have a high FDI number, it means there's probably a lot of pullbacks, and there's probably a horizontal range forming, some kind of a consolidation. With a high fractal dimension number, you can see that it really has, over the interval that's specified, really has been going sideways, forming a range. I love ranges. I love to find that kind of stuff because then I can watch and wait for a breakout above or below. That's how I use it. I just think of that as consolidations, pullbacks, that sort of thing. 30-day Atr Statistics, how far above is price beyond the 30-day average true range, or how far below. And you can use this the same way as RSI, overbought, oversold. I can use it to find really strong stocks or really weak stocks. I can also use it to try and time fading the trend or a reversion to the mean. You have to put this stuff in context. The next section is sectors. I've got some stocks in the various sectors. We also have them up here for a quick summary. You can quickly see which are strong, which are leading, which are lagging. You've got your red, the top 3, the bottom 3, and then I try to highlight the top 10 with green and the bottom 10 with red. So if there's a particularly strong or weak sector and I want to try to participate, then I can jump aboard the leading stocks or the lagging stocks that are in those individual sectors. This one column over here, those are all optional. If you have a basket of ETFs you like to keep an eye on, I like to watch biotech and oil, things like that. And now we have watch lists. And we also have this handy quick position size calculator. In this case, you want to risk $1,000. You're going to risk about a little over $1, so you can get 450 shares. Pretty easy. The watch lists are great. I'm going to start at this side. This is an example of some of the types of watch lists I have. I've got the long up top and the short on the bottom. So IPOs, the best performing, the strong, the weak, value and yield bearing stocks, emerging growth stocks for those who trade can slim style, maybe IBD 50 stocks could go here. Momentum, just stocks that are on my radar because they've had maybe strong moves up, wide range bars, or strong volume. Contraction, this is really tight action, so weekly or daily dojis, inside days, or just tight price action where you have closes very close to prior closes or a tight range. And then stocks within 2% of key moving averages. That's the 20, the 50, the 200. I like to keep an eye on that because there are often areas of institutional players will step in to defend the stock. And then these are a little bit different. I have two lists. I've got a short buy point list and a long buy point list. I'll show you in greater detail in just a moment, but basically, if you have some stocks that you're watching and you have a particular pivot or buy point or sell point in mind, and you know what it is, you can enter that in, and this will tell you how far above or below the pivot that stock is. It'll let you know how close you are to that actual trigger. That was just a quick overview of the summary page. Every piece of data has its own separate page. You can see all these tabs down here. Now, before you use the dashboard, you have to read the disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. If you use it, it's at your own risk. You're only as good as your data, and as everybody knows, technology is not infallible. So you have to agree to this in order to use the dashboard. And it is just a tool, an educational tool. So now, where does all the data that goes into the summary page come from? Well, here's the quick market. Anywhere you see a yellow font or highlighted yellow cells, those are places that you can change. The data has not been locked. You're able to put whatever index you want in there, whatever intermarket you want, whatever sectors, top 10, and you can always change the data provider, and you have a data provider option for each page. Maybe you find that, I don't know, IQ Feed does a better job with one particular tool and Interactive Brokers does a better job with another. Also, usually tickers are limited to 500 each, and you'll have to buy more through IQ Feed to do above and beyond that. So if you have multiple brokers, say you have TD Ameritrade, you have Interactive Brokers, you get 500 tickers each. You can split the load on the various pages so that you don't exceed the limit and have to spend more money on a data provider like IQ Feed, although they do a very good job. Here's the sector list. I've got all the major sectors here. You see them at the top, the spider sectors, although they did just create a couple of new ones and I don't have those yet. And then the last column is just ETFs that I'm interested in, that I like. You can have up to 50 each, although you don't have to. You can see I didn't fill them all in. I choose stocks that have high liquidity and a high ATR, or are bellwethers. There's not a lot of utility stocks I want to trade, but I do want some in my basket in case there's a big day in utilities. I can participate. Of course, I can trade the ETF, but if I don't want to, I have some stock options. Here's the long buy point watch list, and you can put your pivot point in. So maybe you wanted to get in on Apple at 193.78, and you do that for all the stocks that you're interested in. It will automatically sort them and tell you what percentage above or below the stock is at. All these pages are very similar. You have data, then it ranks them automatically through a continuous loop. You can quickly see how much above or below the pivot point you are. These are long buy points. You put the ticker number in and the buy point that you're interested in getting long, and it will automatically sort and keep track of how close or how far away you are from that buy point. Same for shorts. 1 through 8, the ticker 100. You can put in 100 tickers and have 8 watch lists. Here's an example of some of the watch lists that I have. Earnings plays within 2% of the moving averages, and notice I don't have them all filled in, just the ones I'm interested in. Contraction, that's the dojis, the inside days, the tight price action. Then just things that are on my radar. Price action with very strong volume, big moves up, overbought, oversold, whatever. Momentum plays, emerging growth, value and yield stocks, and IPOs. So those are just some examples of watch lists you might want. Then we get to the portfolio. You notice the portfolio and the intraday both have orange tabs because they're both very important. On your portfolio tab, it is not on the intraday dashboard summary page, but it's right next to it. And you've got a way to keep track of your long book and your short book. You can put your ticker in for up to 100 stocks long and 100 stocks short, the price you went long at, and it will keep track of the performance and rank it. Over here, maybe you entered Chem, and you got in at around, I don't know what it was, like 32. There it is. And now it's down to $16 or $17. So it's fallen 48%. And since that's your short book, you're up 48%. It's very important to check your portfolio every day. At the end of the market, before the market, on the weekends. Be aware of what's leading, what's lagging in your portfolio. Be clear on when you're going to get rid of stocks. These aren't actual trades, they're just here for example. So that brings us back to the dashboard. All the watch lists that we covered are here. All the sector information that we covered is in this area on the individual pages. And then the rest is to the right of the dashboard. Also, your quick market recaps are also to the left of the portfolio tab. Whenever you're moving through the dashboard, anytime you see a little red box with a white asterisk, there's usually a little message there until it tries to give you some information. And what's kind of nice about these individual pages are you can get more in-depth knowledge about how the whole basket's doing. This just extracts the top and the bottom. What's nice about these pages is you can look for information kind of on a deeper level. If you want to see how it's performing as a whole, you can get a quick glance. Again, anything that has a highlighted yellow column or data provider with yellow font can be changed. One exception is on this page, the data provider in blue affects only the moving averages up here in the little market summary. I recommend that whatever data provider you're using for the bulk of your quick market, intermarket sectors, and top 10 watch list, that use the same one here for the moving averages, just in case there are any discrepancies between providers. Gaps, pretty self-explanatory. Change off the open. Atr stats to the upside, to the downside, the range. Here's an example. You have the moving averages. I'm just looking to see if price is above the 5 and the 15 EMA. And you can change those to whatever EMA you want. If you want 18 and 20, you can do that. You want 5 and 60, you can change it to whatever you want. Relative strength, you can change the period. Price surge, ATR percent. So most of these you're going to find tickers, you're going to find data provider, and then some kind of a period or interval that you can set. If you find that you don't have any data on your dashboard, it might be because you haven't allowed enough time for it to gather the data and load. So if this was at 10, the first 15 minutes of the market, you're probably not going to have data there. Because why? Because 10 takes 30 minutes, 5 takes 15. 2-day high-low, you can have a higher look back. I found this to be best. Percent off volume, and it just goes on down the line. Percent off volume to the upside, to the downside, the force index, up-down volume, your trends, vortex, DMI, positive, negative, the slopes. On here, the slopes, you can change the number of periods that it looks back and the number of periods that it assesses for the slope. With the percent overbought, oversold, you've got the period for the bands. It's a 10 period, meaning 30 minutes, and the standard deviation can be 2, 3, 4, whatever you want. For the fractal dimension, got 5. I usually like a 10 in the mid dash. And then the statistics to the upside and the downside. If you just want to get a sense of where price could go or where it has gone recently, you can look that way, to the up or the downside. That's just a quick overview of the dashboard. I'm trying to integrate some links here where you can learn more. And they won't be the same. If you see 2 learn more, it's 2 separate resources. You can just right click on it and open hyperlink, and it will open up. Here's an example. It will open up and take you maybe to a video, and it might take you to a page that has a presentation on it. This is a beta version. It's still under development. I'm usually pretty reluctant to share things that haven't thoroughly tested and really hammered out. This has come along pretty well. There's probably still a few refinements I'd like to make, but I've gotten a lot of interest from people asking me if I would share this. And even if you're not interested in a dashboard like this, hopefully maybe I've given you some ideas from the tools on this dashboard that might help you integrate different ways of looking at data and using data to help you with your intraday trading.